Why hello there, and welcome back to Tabletop Ferox. So, Dungeons & Dragons 6th edition, aka 1D&D, or as I have taken to calling it, Dungeon & Dragon, has been announced. I did a video on that, and the first playtest package has been released. I am doing a video on that now. Currently, you are watching it. And this first playtest package covers character origins, which is race and background, and I have a lot of opinions on it, but let's take a look at what's in this thing before I start going off on it. And I guess we'll start by looking at the races. Yes, they are still using the term race, despite fairly strong feedback that people would like them to use perhaps a different term. But I mean, hey, it's not like they're making a really big deal about how much they value player feedback or anything right now. That would just be awkward. Anyway, the playtest has 9 races: human, Ardling, Dragonborn, of course, dwarves, elves, gnomes, halflings, orcs, and tieflings. And I will get into each of them individually, but first I need to bring up 2 changes which are important for the purpose of discussion. First, they have reintroduced feats as a standard part of character creation because, I don't know, I guess 5th edition characters weren't broken enough? And second, character races no longer provide ability score adjustments, which is a thing people have opinions on the internet. So first up, humans, and they are basically the variant feat rules human from 5th edition. They get a bonus feat, they get a bonus skill, but now they also get a bonus inspiration each day. And I feel like with the removal of ability score adjustments from the races, humans have kind of lost their niche because they have always been the versatile one. They get +2 to any ability score, or +1 to all ability scores, and I don't think that a bonus inspiration makes up for that. Like, if I had to choose between a skill, a feat, and a daily inspiration, or dark vision, advantage on every mental saving throw, and a handful of spell-like abilities, I mean, it's really Gnome contest. That was a gnome pun. There's also one very interesting change they made here, and that is humans can now be medium or small, which is cool because some humans are 2 to 4 feet tall, but it's also just really unexpected. Anyway, moving on, Ardlings are the only new race introduced in the playtest materials, and they are celestial beings with animal heads. And like they can fly for short periods and they get spell-like abilities, and they're just kind of garbage overall. And I kind of wonder what their purpose here is. Like, are they supposed to be a celestial counter to the tieflings, like some kind of anti-tiefling? Because here's the thing, tieflings are cool and sexy, and Ardlings are just kind of lame. Overall, it just seems like a really poorly designed homebrew race that, like, some guy follows you around the game store telling you about, even though, like, you're making it really clear that you don't want to talk to him and you're trying to get away from him, but he just keeps following you, telling about the super cool race he made up, and they're celestials and they have animal heads, and, like, you don't want to be rude, but also, you just don't care, and that's how I feel about Ardlings. And I really, really hope they do not make it into the final game because, I mean, honestly, I've got this, like, running gag here on the channel about how much I don't like Dragonborn, and if there's a core player race which is significantly worse than Dragonborn, it kind of ruins the joke. Anyway, next up, Dragonborn. They get dark vision now, and their breath weapon has been retooled a little bit. It's always a 15-foot cone, and it does damage equal to 1d6 plus your level, and is usable a number of times per day equal to your proficiency bonus instead of once per short rest, and I liked it better when it was an encounter power. I do not like Dragonborn thematically. They're actually kind of cool mechanically. Then dwarves, who retain their dark vision, dwarven resistance, and some form of tool proficiency. Also, the subraces are gone, but dwarven toughness is now a default feature. They've also lost dwarven combat training, but here's the thing. We don't know how weapon proficiency is going to work in Dungeon and Dragon. Unfortunately, that's kind of an issue because the dwarves lost an ability that gave them proficiency in weapons, and I don't know if that's going to be a thing that is bad in the future. Also, they've been given a new ability with an old name. Stone Cunning now allows them to activate Tremor Sense while on stone, and it is one of those things that sounds thematically cool. And when you think about it, in the right situations, it is pretty cool, but then you have to question, how often are those right situations really going to come up? Also, dwarves now have a speed of 30, which everyone has a speed of 30, and that is a thing I don't particularly like. Elves retain their dark vision, keen senses, elven ancestry, and trance traits, although technically immunity to magical sleep is now part of trance, not elven ancestry. And the subraces are now lineages, which give you some kind of benefit at level 1, and then a spell-like ability at level 3 and level 5. And I realize they don't call them spell-like abilities anymore, but I am old and set in my ways, and I am going to call them spell-like abilities. And I don't really feel like explaining the various bonuses, which is why they are on screen right now, and also notable, no elf or drow weapon training, much like the dwarf, because I don't know, maybe they changed how weapon proficiency works. We won't know until an unspecified point in the future. Gnomes I already summarized, dark vision, advantage on mental savings throws, and some types of spell-like abilities depending on whether you are rock or grass type. Halflings have no changes other than the removal of subraces, and I guess they're all Lightfoots now and get the naturally stealthy ability, although that gives training and stealth instead of the ability to hide behind larger creatures. But other than that, they get brave, halfling nimbleness, and luck, the regular halfling stuff, more or less unchanged. And half-orcs are now just regular orcs. They retain the dark vision and relentless endurance that half-orcs had, but now get the powerful build ability, which allows them to be counted as a large creature when determining their carrying capacity, lift, drag, etc. And from what I gather, this was an ability that full-blooded orcs had in 5th edition, but now they have it in 6th edition. And then they have a new ability, Adrenaline Rush, which allows them to take a dash action as a bonus action, gaining temporary hit points in the process, and that sounds cool for a barbarian or other berserker type character, but not really anyone else. Okay, maybe like your orc cleric could use the dash to dash into combat to heal a fallen ally while shielding themselves with the temporary hit points. But I feel like that was not the intention behind this ability. And finally, Tieflings, who are, I guess, no longer infernal. They're just kind of whatever now. And also notably can be medium or small, just like humans. They retain their dark vision and really nothing else. They get thaumaturgy as a spell-like ability, and then they basically have the same deal as an elf. They get some ability at 1st level, and then a spell-like ability at 3rd and 5th, depending on their lineage being infernal, abyssal, or chthonic. Because I guess having a coherent mythology with infernal tieflings was just, too hard for them. Or, maybe even worse, they wanted to have a chaotic, neutral, and lawful evil tiefling to balance out the chaotic, neutral, and lawful good ardlings. Which, in case I was not clear about, I do not care for. So, overall thoughts on the races? Fairly inconsistent redesign. Like, halflings, gnomes, and dragonborn have barely been touched, whereas elves and tiefling have gotten a fairly major facelift, and half-orcs have just been replaced with orcs. and they tried to do something with humans. I don't remember what. It probably wasn't noteworthy. And aside from the elves and tieflings, and I guess the ardlings, because they all have the same similar structure, it didn't really feel like there was any direction behind the changes that were being made, beyond just make some changes. And I guess I do have to talk about it. The reason why half-orcs have been replaced with orcs and half-elves have been replaced with nothing. Children of different humanoid kinds, which is basically just a little section that says if you want to play a character with mixed parentage, just take the attributes of one of the parent races and then, quote, mix and match the visual characteristics. And opinions on this have been varied, to say the least, ranging from they're trying to say that removing half-elves is a feature, actually, to they're just trying to avoid the whole situation and not have to write up a description of half-elves and half-orcs, to they are, intentionally or not, diminishing the idea of multiracial identity as a thing that has a place in the game and the game world. And I am obviously not qualified to speak on that last one. I am white as an albino skeleton, but other people are and have made some very insightful observations about this, and I would recommend seeking out their comments on the topic, because by listening to people with different viewpoints and life experiences is how you help your worldview grow into a more diverse, wide, and nuanced one. But I do feel qualified to say that, yeah, it does kind of feel like they were trying to just gloss over the entire concept in this one box and hope that nobody mentioned it. But people did mention it. A lot of people mentioned it. So many people that I felt I had to discuss it in the video. Although, I will say that, to their credit, they described orcs without using the word savage even once. But hey, there is still a second part to this playtest. Backgrounds, or technically backgrounds and languages. For some reason they are listing languages as being like a third element of the character origin, but it's basically just part of the backgrounds. So backgrounds, which are fortunately not nearly as complex as races and will not take as long to describe. Basically, a background is a collection of 6 elements which are intended to be chosen independently by the player as part of their character's overall background. So they get a +2 bonus to one ability score and a +1 bonus to another ability score, or +3 to 3 ability scores. So basically the versatile human ability score adjustments are a thing that everyone gets now. The background also includes 2 skill proficiencies, a tool proficiency, a language, a first level feat, and 50 gold worth of equipment. Now, they do provide sample backgrounds, but are very clear about the fact that building from the ground up or just taking one of the sample backgrounds and modifying it are base options. And you might be thinking, that kind of sounds like it's going to lead to overly optimized characters. And yeah, I mean, are you going to not take +2 strength, +1 dexterity for your melee fighter when that is an option? Are you going to be the one person at the table who keeps missing because you failed to min-max your character as efficiently as the rest of the party? No, of course not. Let's see, what else are people complaining about on Twitter? As I said, feats are back. Hopefully they're not going to be as heavily involved as they were in 3rd edition or 4th edition. Like, getting one at first level's fine, just, not too many. Feats are one of those things that get out of control very quickly if they are not kept in check. I did look over the feats that are provided in the playtest document. None of them seem particularly overpowered or particularly useless. I'm not sure if I ever actually looked at 5th edition feats, so can't say exactly how they compare to those. Spells are apparently now going to be sorted into arcane, divine, and primal spell lists instead of a unique spell list for each class, which is an idea I like. And people are, of course, saying that they stole from Pathfinder 2nd Edition because that is how they do it in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and I like it in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Of course, I don't know how it's really gonna play out in 6th Edition because we just know that the spells are in these 3 spell lists, not how those spell lists are going to be used by the classes because the classes are not discussed in this playtest material. And actually, people are accusing the playtest materials of stealing a bunch of different stuff from Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but they seem to forget that Pathfinder 1st Edition was literally a 3.5 retro clone. And even in 2nd Edition, Pathfinder is still more Dungeons and Dragons than it is original concepts. And I am a Pathfinder fan. I'm just one who acknowledges the fact that it's just a newer version of Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition. And that is basically the Dungeon & Dragon Playtest Packet 1, Character Origins, and overall, I do have issues with it. I think my biggest issue is with how they handled the ability score adjustments. Like, you want to take ability score adjustments off of races? Fine, cool, but like, replace it with something. What we have here just feels like a very much good enough non-solution that you would come up with the night before you had to turn in the project. And there has to be a better way, like, maybe they could have put the ability score adjustments onto the classes. Oh, wait, they couldn't put the ability score adjustments onto the classes because this playtest packet only covers the character origins. And yeah, I'm obviously setting myself up for, a big rant here. So here's what I really see as the big problem. They are putting out 6th edition rules modules to be playtested plugged into 5th edition. So what they are testing and what they are going to be getting feedback on is how the new rules interact with the old 5th edition rules, not how the new rules stand on their own and interact with each other, because we don't have the each other yet. And maybe the shortcomings in the Character Origins playtest will be made up for in the Classes playtest, but we won't know until an unspecified point in the future when we are given that information, which will of course be after they've collected the feedback on the races and backgrounds as they relate to the 5th edition classes and core rules, rather than the new rules that they were meant to interact with. And it just feels like they are approaching this as timidly as possible, like they are very intentionally limiting themselves to these little bubbles which prevent them from really making any major design changes. Which I can't help but think is at least partially motivated by not wanting to scare off the new audience. Like, those of us who have been playing the game since before 2014, we recognize that a new edition is just a thing that happens periodically, not just in Dungeons & Dragons, but in all role-playing games. Like, there have been 4 editions of GURPS, 5 of Vampire the Masquerade, not to mention Vampire the other one, 6 of Shadowrun, 7 of Call of Cthulhu and Gamma World, and technically, Dungeon & Dragon is at least the 8th version of D&D. But here's the thing, for the newer players, the ones who've been introduced to D&D from Stranger Things, Critical Role, Harmon Quest, or, I don't know, sexy goblin and kobold art on the internet, D&D starts with 5th edition, because remember, 5th edition isn't actually called 5th edition, it's just called Dungeons & Dragons. Like Mortal Kombat 9, or Scream 5, or Halloween H4O. And I feel like the Wizards are really trying to ease this new audience into the idea of a new edition as gently as possible by assuring them how it's all going to be backwards compatible, and it's all going to be exactly the same, but better, which, it can't be the same but better. you know, like to the point where they seem afraid to call it a new edition. Which, of course, you know, is what they say they're doing now, because, honestly, let's remember that back when 5th edition was D&D Next, they were claiming it was going to be backwards compatible with every edition. And that certainly did not happen. So, I wouldn't put that much stock into this 100% backwards compatibility. We're not going to change anything, you know, line that they are towing right now. But yeah, as of right now, I kind of see this going one of two ways. Either they are going to ship a Theseus it, where they replace one rule at a time until eventually it is arguably a different game, or they are going to take the safest route possible and basically just keep 5th edition with whatever the least objectionable minor rule tweaks they got from this whole playtest thing happened to be. And the way I see it, neither of those is going to result in the best possible new edition. Let me give you a little history lesson here. TSR did not do a lot of revolutionary rules redesigns when they had Dungeons & Dragons. But then when Wizards of the Coast got D&D, they looked at 2nd edition and said, what is wrong with this? How can we make it better? Then when 4th edition came along, they looked at 3rd edition and said, what is wrong with this? How can we make it better? They failed, but the thing is, they tried. They took the risk. They did a radical redesign. And then, you know, with 5th edition, they looked at 3rd edition and 4th edition and said, what is wrong here? How do we make it better? And that's why you have the 5th edition that you have. But from what I've seen in this playtest, and especially that damn trailer, it seems like they have a level of emotional investment in the rules that is not going to allow them to see any inherent flaws, which, you know, is necessary to then fix those flaws. But, you know, hey, I am overly cynical and negative. It is part of my charm. Maybe one D&D will be great. Maybe it will be the greatest Dungeon and Dragon of all times. I don't know. I mean, anything's possible. We're still very early. Like, these are all, you know, my assumptions based on, like, 120-something page document. So there's still like a whole year of development left, and you know, I'm gonna be positive for this particular part of the video and say, let's give the Wizards the benefit of a doubt. They've done okay things before. They also one time claimed that they owned a trademark on the word kaiju, so that kind of, you know, eats away at good things they've done. Either way, the important thing is that the feedback survey opens up on September 1st, and you're going to want to go there and fill that out to let Wizards of the Coast LLC know that you do not want Ardlings in the game. Maybe tell them to add Flumps as a player race. That would be better than Ardlings. Or like, I don't know, a Pumpkin. A Pumpkin would be a better player race than an Ardling. Or Worms. Just like a pile of worms. Not like with a hive mind or anything, just like a pile of worms squirming over a sword. These are all better options than Ardlings. And thank you for watching. Extra special thanks to my Fightin' Flail Snails, Samuel Gorski, Randy Mulholland, and Toshirokuro came for the comedy but stayed for the nacho cheese. If you'd like to be cool like them, you can check out the Patreon, early access to videos, fun stuff that I make for the Patreon, all that jazz. And if you don't want to do that, that's cool too. You can still hit all the lovely buttons, like, subscribe, other videos that are on the screen. Ooh, they're so tempting. Don't you want to click on them? I don't have to talk about Dungeon and Dragon until the next playtest packet comes up, so I'll be back with something that is not this, and I will see you next time.